Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and in Pokemon TCG Live, there is a format called Trainer Trials. And in my opinion, Trainer Trials are the biggest new feature in Pokemon TCG Live that we've seen. If you're not familiar with TCG Live as a game, I'll give you like a quick rundown. It's obviously the Pokemon TCG. It's a way to play it, unlike Pokemon TCG Pocket, which is just a completely separate game. It's a way to play the Pokemon TCG, but do it online. Speaking of Pokemon TCG Online, that was the previous client. Pokemon TCG Online was okay. It was pretty outdated. That was its biggest flaw, though it did have other issues. It allowed you to play a few different formats as well. It had standard format, which was the main one. There's also expanded, which is black and white on. There is legacy format. Legacy format was Heart Gold Soul Silver plus black and white. There was theme format as well. Theme format was with theme decks, and there was also unlimited. And those five formats, standard, it's standard, I imagine. If you're familiar with the Pokemon TCG, you're familiar with standard. It essentially is the Pokemon TCG, and it currently is really the only format that people play a lot. There are other formats that are played some, but nowhere near close to standard. I will talk about some of those other formats though. There is expanded. Expanded format is a format in which as I said, it's black and white on. I will say it's kind of degenerate. Pokemon TCG Live actually also has expanded format. It has standard and expanded. It had those for essentially the entire time. However, expanded is in, I guess, beta in Pokemon TCG Live. It's only Sun and Moon on, removing the cards that are black and white and X and Y era cards, which honestly like is kind of positive for the format, but it does remove it from the like official full format, so it's hard to find lists and it's a bit of a mess. It's a bit deserted there. But in Pokemon TCG Online, it was okay. Then also with theme format, that was a cool format. Ultimately, it's honestly it was a really successful format, but long story short, it got discontinued for a few reasons, and so it's not around anymore. Then there was Legacy format. At the time in which I played Legacy format, it was a big mess and unfortunately pretty unplayable due to difficulty accessing cards, and also there are a lot of bots. There's also Unlimited, which is like every card that wasn't a ladder. Unlimited in Pokemon TCG Online was just like expanded essentially, and then the full Unlimited format is kind of what people play casually, I guess, but it's like if you're playing it seriously, it's completely unplayable. So I did want to preface this with talking about those formats and also talking about the tiers here as well, where spoilers, there's not going to be an S tier format. I'm pretty confident on that. Not 100% sure, but standard is like definitely the best format because the cards are all designed for standard. If you look at expanded format, cards are kind of sort of designed for expanded as well. But not exactly. There have been recently some bans of cards very quickly after they were released, or bans of cards that are related to release cards in the expanded format, which isn't really good. Bans generally are the sign of, I guess, bad card design, I would say, and generally are avoidable. And Pokemon has just chosen to, not really care about it because people don't play expanded that much. And then you look at GLC as well. GLC is a format which is a fan-made format by Andrew Mahone. We'll be talking about it. Though the full format is a pretty cool format. I'd say it's format 2 or 3. Expanded has fallen off a lot since Pokemon TCG Online as well, I will say, partially because Live doesn't have it in this full form. But ultimately, it's a cool format. It's a popular format. It's a fun format. Not too much. I mean, I've talked about it in the past. I'm probably gonna make another video, kind of going over like all the stuff with GLC. But that's solid there. And those are probably, I don't know. I'd say like they're not really that close to standard though, because the cards aren't designed for either of those formats. And that's about it for the alternate formats people play a lot. There are some other ones as well. But ultimately, the trainer trials are a new format for live because, as I said, Pokemon TCG Online had a lot of formats. And the reason why alternate formats are really important is because they add a different experience to the game. So obviously, you want the format to be fun. You want it to be unique as well. Being unique, in my opinion, is potentially the most important thing, being unique to the other formats within the game, specifically standard format, because as I said, most people play standard, so you want to be unique from standard, but it still needs to be good. If it's like very different but just terrible, then that's not good either. Anyway, so that was a bunch of talking about kind of criterion stuff. I'm sure some people have already skipped to the end, but anyways, the that's the criteria there. And so I will be more harsh on the formats that are more similar to standard, but still acknowledging whether or not they're fun. Also, the training trials are a format which rotate, so it's a bunch of different formats here. Anyways, let's hop into ranking them here, and I'm going to go over them and say what they are, and also say how long they've been in the game for. I believe, have had 26 weeks of trainer trials so far, or actually no, we've had I don't remember, not quite 26. We're like somewhere within this section. I think Half Year Havoc just started. But anyways, we've had 26 weeks revealed so far. And the first week or first 2 weeks, I think it was a little more because of some weird stuff. We got Singleton Showdown. And Singleton Showdown is a format which is Singleton. It's standard in a Singleton. And so Singleton, if you don't know, is one copy of every card. It's fine, honestly. This format is all right. Obviously, with singleton formats, I'm just gonna. Oh, also the formats are like I had to make images because most of them don't have logos. GLC actually has a logo, but I didn't use that because it's funnier. And the rest, as far as I'm aware, don't. So, yeah, this is singleton, and I think it's. I'm gonna pop in the seat here preemptively. It's a format where again, it's singleton means that you're less consistent. Um, you can then play with more like lower like a little bit weaker cards that do similar things, which something like Lisa's Appeal in Standard like doesn't see any play. It's like a worse version of Boss's Orders, but it's not that much worse. So then you'll just play it in your decks. It's actually interesting there. I think that's by far the most interesting example. There are other cards that are like mediocre supporters or like weird draw engines and things like that. But ultimately, it honestly plays kind of like Standard, except your decks are just like super hit or miss. That being said, it's like kind of fun to deck build for, and the gameplay is like decent. It's not great, but I've heard definitely some good things about it. I think I'm a little lower than other people. If I was just doing it completely based on, obviously it is like subjective, but if it was just my experiences, I'd probably put it in D or F. Honestly, I had a pretty unpleasant time playing it because a lot of games, it's like you don't set up, then one player sets up and they just kind of win. Because your opponent, it's really hard to set up, or not very hard, moderately hard to set up, and hard to set up well. Except there are times when you will set up really well as well, because it's just like very inconsistent. So theoretically, you could get like an even stronger board state in Singleton than Standard because you have more options, and options are fun. But again, it's not like you have access to them all the time. You just have access to whatever you've drawn into. Anyways, it's okay. It's pretty simple as well, and we've had it around for 5 weeks, I believe. So that's like okay. I think it's a fine enough format. I just don't think the way that the cards are designed in Standard, especially trainers, like most cards in a set, obviously are not trainers. They're Pokemon, but most of the cards in your deck are trainers, not Pokemon. I hope I said that right. So anyways, you don't really have enough trainers to fill out your deck, which is unfortunate. We'll talk about GLC as well, which is a singleton format, and the full GLC and live GLC as well, which there's a difference there, which is meaningful to talk about here. But anyways, it's okay. Then we have the next one, Twin Battle. Twin Battle we've had 7 weeks of Twin Battle. I don't know why. So the World Championships are right around the corner. And trust me, this is related. So I guess apparently, so for some reason they're doing like twin battles for the World Championships, and I think they also did twin battles for like some other celebration. I don't know why, but yeah, twin battles is like singleton, but it's 2 copies of every card, and again, it's Standard. This does mean you can't play Ace Specs. Does that really matter? Not really. I think twin battles are terrible. I'm not gonna lie. I've said this before. I think they're pretty bad. The reason for that is because if you look at a deck in Standard, you're gonna have some cards you're going to have a bunch of copies of, and some cards you're going to have like a few copies of, and that's intentional, and that makes the deck more interesting, and that's like how the game is kind of designed and stuff. But then you look at like twin battles, and you're like, oh, well, okay, so now I need to play 2 copies of everything. So there's the stable trainers, which I'm going to play 2 copies of, and it's going to kind of hurt my consistency. But it's not like you're playing these interesting weaker supporters as much. Like, it's not like each supporter is special either. So they're kind of just some that you're hoping you draw into and some you don't. It's a similar idea to Singleton, but I'd say it's a little more boring. And there's less like deck expression because you're either committing more, you're committing 2 copies or 0 copies. Those are the only options. Singleton is 0 or 1 copies, but again, you're gonna have 60 different cards as opposed to 30, so it's kind of boring. And then also in Standard, you look at decks and you're like, oh well, you got like 2 of your main attackers a lot of the time. I mean, even it might have more. You could have less, I guess, if you're in like a toolbox deck, but your decks are these kind of pseudo toolboxy decks, kind of like I don't know, probably some combination of like Dragapult EX and like Charizard EX and Pidgeot EX or something like that. And they're honestly just very boring, in my opinion. It plays kind of like Standard. The decks are a little less consistent. I will say the games are all right. I mean, it plays kind of like Standard, and Standard's fun to play. It's not always what everyone's interested in, but it is fun. But then just play Standard. Like, it's just worse than Standard. You're going to find more interesting matchups in Standard, most likely, because you can either play ranked for, you kind of know what you're going to get, or casual where you're like less. I don't really play casual in Standard like ever because ranked, you see like more normal stuff, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, you can like have a different experience there. I think Twin Battles isn't really gonna ever be what you're looking for. Honestly, it's not completely horrendous to play, but also it's definitely not a format that really should be a trainer trial, because trainer trials are supposed to be special and unique. They don't need to be crazy, but they need to be somewhat unique. And I think Twin Battles really fails at that. And again, the deck construction is kind of boring. The gameplay is kind of boring. It's not horrible, but it's not really something you choose to do. Then, and also, why did they do it the most? Why did they have this format the most of all of them? I have no idea. It's like, in my opinion, definitely the worst. Yeah, anyways. So then we have the next one, which is the Silver Series. Silver Series is, by the way, kind of a stupid name. We've had this for 3 weeks, not sure why. This format is single prize standard, essentially. It's silver because I guess the silver borders, but not sure how this format would change when like standard changes. If it would just be Scarlet and Violet on or whatever. But anyways, it's single prize standard, so it's all right. I think this is one of the formats that was heavily dominated by Festival Lead with Diplin. I don't really know why. Well, I do. I mean, Diplin's like super good. It's kind of like the Dragapult of single prize format. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. Ultimately, I don't think that's a huge issue, but I've heard some people say like, "Oh, I stopped playing because I saw it 10 times in a row," and I did not have that experience with any of the formats. I saw the deck some, did want to acknowledge that. That being said, they could also just ban it. I'm not really gonna drop it too much for that, but did want to acknowledge that. But ultimately, it's like kind of cool. I mean, it's single prizers. People like, single prizers. Most of the cards in the game are single prizers, but most of the cards that people play are not single prizers. So yeah, I mean, it encourages playing interesting things, I guess. It's not an amazing format. I mentioned Festival Lead being super good, which is kind of boring. I mean, it's like kind of fun. It's not like the most boring deck or anything, but it doesn't have. I mean, you're just kind of attacking. Nothing too crazy going on there. And then you look at stuff like Badoo or like other like locking cards are good. And the meta is actually just like kind of degenerate, I'd say. It's not horrendous, but it's not great. That being said, like playing single prizes is fun. I'll give it B tier. I think if they work with it a little more, that'd be cool. Again, it's only had 3 weeks. This is the tied for the second least of any format, which is pretty disappointing here. But it's all right. Again, nothing too crazy, but I do hope it comes back. I hope they give it a second or I guess third chance here. Then we have the next format, which is GLC. GLC is the one where there's the most to talk about here. If you're not familiar with GLC, it's, I guess, the most complicated of the formats, maybe the second most. But it's a format in which it says it's black and white on, but it says current live. That means it's sun and moon on. The format itself of GLC is supposed to be black and white on, though. And then it is singleton, so one copy of each card, except for basic energy. I didn't say that with a singleton, but that's how that works. Then you also have all your Pokemon must be of the same type. If you have any questions about the GLC rules as well, if you're like confused about anything, if you're not familiar with the format, then just ask down below, because there's a few things. They're not that complicated, but there are some questions that are asked sometimes. But anyways, then cards without rule boxes aren't, or cards with rule boxes are not allowed. Also 8 specs, and then there's a ban list. So pretty much it's singleton, single prize, and monotype. So, and then it's also expanded format without the ban. So, I believe GLC is the only format in which you can play Scoop Up Net. I'm not sure if that's true. I think that's true though. Anyways, that's cool. I like Scoop Up Net, but did want to mention that. It's not a huge deal, but I wanted to mention it. Anyways, in GLC though, the full GLC is black and white on. But then in live, you can't play the black and white X and Y era cards. The X and Y and black and white era cards there's less of them than in like Sun and Moon, or like black and white and X and Y are just like they have smaller sets. And then also you had the power level of the Pokemon was just like a lot weaker. So pretty much all the Pokemon are pretty irrelevant. There's some that are meaningful that do hurt the meta a little bit because they make some decks weaker in ways that aren't fun, but it's not a huge deal in my opinion. That being said, I think it is a bigger deal that you have the loss of some trainers, which are good. I will say some of the trainers aren't super fun that are not there. So, I said stuff that like I didn't like. Full Expanded has some pretty degenerate stuff here. GLC also does, which is banned, like Hexmaniac. I don't like Hexmaniac. I know Hexmaniac, like, it adds depth and stuff, so Hexmaniac might be good for it, but I don't like it. Anyways, yeah, so I don't think it's like horrendous that those aren't there, but it does mean that your decks are less consistent, which I said with Singleton. sealed in standard, there isn't enough depth. But with GLC, there is in full GLC, there is enough depth because you have more cards, but within live GLC, there's not as much. So ultimately, it does hurt it not being the full format. It doesn't destroy it, but it hurts a little bit. Overall, though, I think it's a good format. It is the only format here really with an actual following. The other ones kind of have a following, but not that much. So GLC does. I think a lot of the people who play GLC don't like live. Obviously, so this is the GLC one. It's Andrew Mahone, the YouTuber. So obviously, a lot of people who follow him like GLC and vice versa. Regardless, GLC is a popular format. I think it makes a lot of sense being in live. Both for GLC to promote it and to promote live. So I do think it is a good addition. Obviously, it would be better if it was the full format. I think it's more important with GLC. Well, I think it's good for GLC compared to expanded, where I don't think it's actually good. It would be good for them to show that they could do it because of like competency reasons. But ultimately, I think it's fine the way it is. I guess. I mean, it's not great. It could be better. But also, it's like interesting. Most of these are pretty boring. There's one other that has like a lot of rules. I don't think a lot of rules is super bad. I will say, looking at pretty much all, like some of them are 2 weeks, some of them are 1 week, except for this twin battle one, which is 4 weeks. So 1 or 2 weeks isn't really enough time to like completely learn a format, which isn't necessarily bad. And if the formats are coming back, then you can kind of learn it and look forward to your favorite ones. But having the forms not too complicated could be good for that. That being said, I think most of them are a little too simple. Also, what they're starting to do a little more is give you pre-built decks to play within the formats, which is kind of nice to allow you to play them easier. I think they've only been twin battles so far. I could be wrong on that. Comment down below if I am. But anyways, yeah, they've done that. Also with GLC, you can find GLC decks, but you can really just find not live GLC decks online. So I figured I'd mention that. Overall, though, it's a cool format to have in live. I think it's made a lot of sense for a while now, and it's good to see it here. I think it makes a lot of sense within the rotation. People have said that it could be the like another format. I think it makes more sense in the rotation here, but I do think it's better than most of the other formats in the rotation as well. So if they aren't gonna improve the other formats in the rotation, then I wouldn't mind seeing GLC being a mainstay and live here. Then we have the common and what's it called? CU Cup expanded. It's like a lot of the names are like kind of weird as well. But anyways, you got CU Cup expanded. This is an expanded format. I believe the only one that's actually just expanded, GLC, is like kind of expanded, but there's like different bands. So CU Cup expanded has the same bands, and it's only common and uncommon cards. Unfortunately or fortunately, the commons and uncommons have gotten better over time. They used to be like really like pretty bad, and now they're. I mean, like I think Difflin isn't uncommon, unless I'm wrong about that. But I believe this is one of the formats dominated by Festival Lead. And there's some like really solid uncommons. Previously, this is the format Pauper, by the way, if you're not familiar. I believe the Silver Series was called Aceless as well. I'll mention that. It's like weird because there's another format called Aceless. But anyways, this is the Pauper format, which isn't, it's not really that popular, but it's sometimes mentioned. And it's kind of cool, playing with Pokemon that don't really get a spotlight. There are some pretty good cards, though, as I said, that are commons and uncommons, specifically Pokemon. There's always been like decent trainers of that rarity, but now there are some Pokemon that are kind of at the forefront, like Budew, right? Like no one really wants to be going up against like Budew all the time. But anyways, it's an all right format. This is definitely one I enjoyed because of expanded as well. I didn't mention this too much with GLC, but these formats allow you to play with cards you can't play in standard, which is pretty fun. Playing with them is a really fun experience. And I mean, you can play them all expanded, right? So it's not like you can't play with them, but now you can like play. I was gonna say you can play with them in a more fair playing field, but honestly, the people in live expanded that I played against, like generally, it's a wide variety of different things. A lot of them aren't super good. But anyways, yeah, it's an all right format. It's a good format. I'd say it's B tier here. I could put it in A tier. I think I'll save it. I have I think one more that I'm gonna put in A tier, but ultimately it's an interesting format, and I think it could do with a bit more development, maybe some bans as well. And the formats with bans, I think that's good, right? Having bans, again, the cards aren't made for the format, so you need to kind of tweak it a little bit to make it just right. And I think they could do that with CU Cup Expanded. Also, this one's only had 3 weeks, which is like kind of sad. But anyways, then we have the next one here, which is Aceless, which has only had 1 week. Why has this only had 1 week? Anyways, Aceless is a format here, which is another standard format. format, and it says that it's singleton, and it's except for basic entries, it's also non-rule box. So singleton, single prize standard, and then there's some bans as well. And I think this works pretty well. You kind of compare it to GLC. The GLC is a format in which you have the restriction of monotype, but then you have a larger card pool. So I think it kind of evens out here with comparing that. Now, Aceless, you have a smaller card pool, but you can play with different types, and this creates some really fun combos that are just interesting that like aren't as impactful. Like a single price standard, you're playing with no, sorry, singleton standard, the one ofs. You're just playing with cards that are just played in standard, but with singleton and single price standard, you're playing with cards here that are more interesting attacking options. Something like the Dunsparce, for example, becomes a more interesting attacking option. You see cards in a different manner, which you wouldn't have seen before. So I think it adds a lot of depth. Also, there's some bans here. Honestly, I don't know if these bans are perfect. There's Luxurious Cape and Brambleghast, which have a lot of HP. There's Dusknoir, which is like very strong, potentially problematic, and there's also a bunch of coin flip Pokemon here, which is kind of interesting. Coin flip Pokemon that flip coins when they're hit into. So those are kind of annoying. I definitely do not mind them being banned. I do not like those cards. But anyways, I really like this format. I don't think it's. I mean, I'd say it's right next to GLC here. I don't know which one I'd say is better. Obviously, GLC has a following. It's been here longer. It's had 4 weeks. I don't think I said that. But it's had 4 weeks, unlike Aceless through just one. So clearly, Pokemon kind of thinks a little higher of it. I am wondering, Aceless. So the first 5 formats we talked about so far, all appeared within the first set, the first literal set, Journey Together here, and then they all returned as well, I believe. And then Aceless here, and then the next one, Half Your Havoc, have only first appeared in the second set. Aceless only appearing in the second set. So I think they're kind of developing them and trying out more exciting things. That being said, like it's a long time. I said it's 26 weeks. That's a lot. But that's half a year. But anyways, with Destined Rivals, Aceless, I think was a really cool thing to add to the game. Something I wish I'd played more. I really enjoyed playing it. But anyways, a really, really fun format. They're very similar to GLC as well, being Singleton. I don't think Singleton itself is amazing. I mean, just Singleton standard is kind of whatever. Singleton is interesting. I don't actually hate the idea of 2-ofs either, but you need some like other depth. Honestly, I think if they did GLC, except instead of Singleton, it's 2 copies of each card with maybe the standard card pool, or just live expanded card pool, it could be a little more interesting. Singleton can be swingy as well. I like kind of talked about it, but you could get stuff prized. You could also I don't know, it could get like Lost Zone or something. So ultimately, 2 copies of a card can allow you to make decks in a more focused way, as opposed to Singleton, where it's more of like a toolboxy style deck, which can be fun, but ultimately having options I think is nice. And then we have the last one, which is Half Your Havoc. Half Your Havoc actually inspired me to make this video here. Half Your Havoc is a format which is only cards in, I guess, standard, but it's the last half year, last 6 months. So the first time it was Prismatic Evolutions on, which was Prismatic Evolutions, Journey Together and Destined Rivals, and now it's in the game right now, and it is Journey Together, Destined Rivals still, and no Prismatic Evolutions, but you now have Black Bolt and White Flare. And in my opinion, this is a really solid format. Well, I don't know, it's interesting. At first when I saw it, I was like, this is not going to be good, because Prismatic Evolutions, if you don't know, it contains a lot of reprints of like pretty much all the best cards in the game. Maybe not all of them, but like a lot of them. So you could just play like Dragapult, and it's like, oh, people are just playing Dragapult, and that's it. So that's actually not true. The one, like, there's some weird stuff. I could really dive into it more. I'm not going to dive into like the meta, what's good and what's not. I will say that trainers Pokemon are very good. I mean, like all the main sets are trainers Pokemon sets, so that makes sense. And there's not really search for other things that aren't trainers Pokemon, so playing trainers Pokemon is like super good. But the format also changes a lot. It changes with every set. Oh, I didn't say this, but they rotate, but the schedule is released every set. So every time it'll come back around, it's a little bit different, but it's not completely different either. But it does have a meaningful shakeup, unlike standard, which with every new set it gets some changes, but usually it's not even that huge. Even with rotation and a new set, it's not usually that huge. And expanded with a new set is like barely new at all. And GLC barely changes with a new set. These expanded pool formats, it's just like, they're, I guess, resilient. The meta doesn't change, which is there's good and there's bad to that, but I think the shifting meta is really nice compared to expanded again, which is in the game, which doesn't have a shifting meta. Standard with a somewhat shifting meta. Half Your Havoc with a very shifting meta, I think feels pretty fun. It's not too chaotic. I mean, you should be familiar with most of the cards in the format. I mean, they are all standard format cards. It's not like you're playing these weird cards all the time. The overall, I think it's a pretty solid format. I'm not gonna I don't know. Honestly, it's really grown on me. I'm going to put it in A tier. Maybe I'm crazy for this, but tell me what you think down below in the comment section on the trainer trials. If you have any ideas as well, I'd really like them to see, which is a suggestion I've seen by I think a few people, which is like really shake things up and like change the rules of the game. I don't think Live can actually do it. I think they're unfortunately not able to physically because they're like bad or whatever. But if they could do a format where you had like a different number of prizes or something, maybe a pocket inspired format, that could be pretty fun. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. I'm really excited for the World Championships and the new reveal, which may or may not have happened by the time you watch this / I posted it. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.